Hi, everyone. My name is Bria Brown, and I'm so excited that today is the Big Share and for y'all to be joining us on the live stream for our last panel of the day. It's been an exciting day. We've learned so much, and I'm just so excited about the day that we have had. And I'm excited to bring you all our panel today on voting and accessibility, specifically called Real Democracy Demands Taking on Information and Accessibility in the Voting Process. And I'm so excited to be joined by our panelists here today to talk about this. So I would love it if y'all could introduce yourselves and let me know a little bit about you and the work that you and your organization do.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Bria. This is an exciting day, as always. I am Deborah Cronmiller. I am the Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. For 104 years, the League has been a proud player in the democracy space and a proud defender of everyone's right to vote and have that vote counted. And I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have.
Thanks, Deborah. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to just be in community with you all again. I feel like I see you guys sometimes on Zoom, but never to this capacity. We're always working when we see each other, and now we get to just kind of like brag about our work proudly, as we should. And so my name's Yuseli Flores. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Racial Equity and Economic Justice Advocate for the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. We are a nonpartisan watchdog group that tracks and exposes money and politics in Wisconsin. 30 years ago, if you wanted access to political campaign distribution or funding or even just donors, you would have to go to the Capitol. They'd give you a big box full of receipts, and you'd have to almost like paw through all these receipts. And so now we got to put these receipts online. They're accessible. It's a free website where everybody can have access to how money is being used in politics. And we also post original stories on money and politics. We work with media to convey all of our information and just definitely educate the public. We advocate for transparency and for reforms that level the electoral playing field, and we defend our civil rights and liberties. We offer a vision of a democracy with equal participation in racial equity and economic justice, and that's my role there as their advocate.
Awesome. This is a really powerful group of women to be with. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be with you all. I'm Denise Jess, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am also a person who lives with blindness, so my lived experience, as well as holding the lived experiences of Wisconsin's 110 or so people living with significant vision loss, guides absolutely everything that I do in my work. Our mission at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired is to promote the dignity and empowerment of all Wisconsinites living with vision loss through advocacy, education, and vision services. Voting is really central to a lot of the work that we do in the advocacy space, because it links to so many things that matter in the lives of people with disabilities: transportation access, healthcare access, services for assistance with employment and education and civil rights. So being able to pave a path for people with disabilities to be able to cast our vote privately and independently and with dignity is really, really critical. We partner also with the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition, so that our work really represents across disability. And I think one of the things that's so powerful to name is that people with disabilities and older adults are significant marginalized groups that sometimes get forgotten when we talk about marginalized groups. And if we were able to all have access to our ballots, we'd see the numbers of voters go up significantly. But there are so many barriers that we know folks are not casting their ballot as they should be able to.
Awesome. Thanks for introducing yourselves. So back to the sort of the title of this panel, Real Democracy Demands Taking on Information and Accessibility Challenges and Opportunities for Wisconsin's Electorate. I'm wondering, what does that mean exactly? Can you all define what accessibility means when you think about Wisconsin's electorate and the voting process?
Sure, this is Denise. I'm happy to kick it off. When I think about access for people with disabilities, I think about the entire voting space, everything from getting the ID that is required to vote to being able to access information on the candidates, the ballot, the elections, being able to vote absentee or at the polling place, whatever your desire is or needs are, being able to vote if you live in a care facility, and being able to vote even if you are under guardianship. So we think about access really broadly because there are so many barriers to be overcome. And there are also rights written into both state and federal law that help preserve the right of voters with disabilities to vote. Sadly, though, many of our voters themselves and our public officials and voting officials may not have great knowledge of those laws and rights, and so continue to deny people access out of that place of not understanding what their rights really are. So just as a quick overview, but I could get lost in the details of talking about all the places that there are barriers, but everything from start to finish, there's usually some kind of barrier that we want to break down and create greater access through through really honoring the laws that are there, and for getting people the information that they need to be self-advocates in this space, and then also looking at the technologies and where are there barriers in the technologies that are prohibiting people from being able to cast their ballot privately and independently.
And Bria, thank you for that question. I think the League of Women Voters, like our partners, are really trying to ensure that voters have the information that they need to cast a ballot, but importantly also have the access to the polling place that they need to have their voice heard. For years, we've done a number of different strategies to really ensure that this goal of empowering voters and defending our democracy occurs. We have had a statewide, a robust voter observation program. And this puts people in polling places, in early voting sites, to ensure that, as Denise was talking about, the laws that are on our books for what should be happening are actually in practice happening. And if they're not, we can draw attention to that in real time. And then afterward, in a report that we generate after each election, and we make recommendations to the Wisconsin Elections Commission to change processes or give additional guidance or ensure that training happens that maybe is not happening, so that the voters' rights are actually being upheld. We also put together a voter guide. We call it the Vote 411 guide. And this is an opportunity for candidates to speak directly to the voters. And we assemble the guide in such a way that it's only the voice or the words of the candidates that we print. We're not taking other information from other sources. It's what they want to tell the voters in response to the questions that we're asking them. And then recently, we've been actually translating our Vote 411 guide into Spanish. We want to make sure that as many voters as possible have access to this really important information that will help them be informed, and so they can cast their vote. And I think another significant place that the League has always been in and continues to be in is in the courts. We do have robust laws. We do have protections written into our Constitution and the federal Constitution. And when those laws and constitutional rights are not being exercised, someone's got to come and call it out. And that's what we do. And we have had some very good wins in the past couple of years. We've had some losses, unfortunately. We lost in court about the use of the drop boxes, but we've recently won in court with regard to counting a ballot, an absentee ballot in particular, that a witness, not the voter, but the witness may not have applied all of the right answers to the questions on the certificate. That is nothing to do with the voter's eligibility. And the courts, in fact, in Dane County and Circuit Court indicated that that's exactly true, that the federal right that a voter has to cast their ballot is not negated if a witness doesn't provide a small piece of information that's immaterial to the voter's eligibility to cast their ballot. So it's those kind of cases that I think, and those kind of challenges that help not only build awareness about what our rights are as voters, but really help ensure that clerks and elections officials and administrators of our elections have all of the information they need to create not only the proper level of accessibility, but the proper access for every voter to cast their ballot.
Mm-hmm. I'll add to that. Some people watching might be wondering, well, how do these three organizations coincide, or how do we work together? And well, we work together in a coalition with one another as part of a larger coalition called the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition. Just said coalition 3 times. Whoa. Which has many subgroups, including election protection, which is what Deborah shared that the league carries very gracefully throughout every single election. Elections communications, where we make sure that we all share the same common language to make sure nothing is warped and nothing is missed when we educate our community on voting, which includes vote411.org. And that's basically where I send anybody that has questions about what elected official they should vote for. I'm like, read it up. You have all the resources right there. So this is what we do to make sure that they have, they're educated on their rights as a voter and what they can do year round to make sure that their vote counts those 365 days a year. We share resources, information, and toolkits as well to make sure that we're just all on the same page in our state, with the hope to just continue to strengthen trust in our state's democracy with the lowercase d.
Awesome. Thank y'all. And I am going to throw in a question to ask sort of, I guess, what is at stake when accessibility to voting, the voting process isn't prioritized? What is at stake and who is left out in the process when that happens? Because I think that there's maybe some obvious answers, but maybe there's more that we should highlight as well.
I'm happy to kick it off. This is Denise. First, access to that photo ID that is required for voting. 31% of Wisconsinites are non-drivers, and in some of our urban counties and some of our most rural and tribal counties, those percentages are closer to 40%. So, that's a significant amount of people that don't have an access to driving a car to the DMV to get that ID. And then we face the transportation barrier of simply getting to the DMV, its limited hours, and sometimes further locations. So right there, that's an access barrier that we need to continue to break down and work with the DOT on increasing hours and satellite offices to make it easier to get the necessary identification to be able to vote. For voters with disabilities who want to vote absentee, there are significant barriers. A lawsuit that we saw happened last summer of 2023. It was affiliated with the Dropbox issues. Was that there was concern that voters could not return the voters had to be the ones to return their absentee ballot. For many people with disabilities, that's impossible. You know, if they have mobility issues or fine motor issues, even getting that ballot personally into the mailbox was a barrier. And we really believed strongly, and the court supported us in saying that voters with disabilities have the right to assistance, and that assistance included getting support to get the absentee ballot returned to the clerk, and that a family member could carry it, someone could put it in the mailbox, etc. And we've needed to work with the Elections Commission to make sure that that's understood by clerks, because even after that court order, we saw different things happening in different parts of the state with clerks not accepting ballots that might have been returned by family members or someone that the voter has chosen and trusted. In the state of Wisconsin, any of us with print-related disabilities, so blindness or other cognitive disabilities or difficulty in reading, cannot fill out an absentee ballot privately and independently. It comes in the mail. It's in tiny font, 8-point maybe. And so we are dependent on having someone read us the ballot. And we have to trust that they're reading us the complete ballot, and then that they're reading us all the candidates. And then we have to entrust that they're marking the candidates of our choosing. So our independence and privacy is really stripped in voting absentee. If we don't have someone that we trust implicitly to do that ballot, then our vote is in danger. We've tried to garner legislative support for making the necessary statutory changes to be able to have an accessible absentee ballot. And we have encountered disinterest and resistance from the legislature. So, needing to explore what are other options for that. Even when we get to the polls, accessing the ballot there, poses the same issues, which is why there's accessible voting equipment in every polling place. By law, it should be in every polling place. It should be turned on, tested, ready to go. And so we do a lot of education on that voting equipment. And we still know that across the state, there's different, different situations roll out. People can't access the equipment, or it's not turned on, or it hasn't been tested, or the poll workers don't know how to use it, and then people are declined the ability to use that equipment. So there's more, but those are some of the things that we really actively work on to remove those barriers, making sure that voters in care facilities have the right to be able to cast their ballot. And we saw a lot of bills in the state legislature during this session that would have put limitations on that, such as notifying family members that voting deputies were going to be there and that family members could come observe if they wanted to, which again infringes on the privacy and the rights of the voters. So that's just a handful of things that are on our active work list to communicate with poll workers, clerks, the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and others about, so that we can bring those things forward. And we're so grateful to the League, because several of the questions on the voting survey and the things that they're observing have to do with accessibility. And we work with the Elections Commission to make sure that polling places are reviewed at every election, specifically around accessibility, and then we can create the report for those particular clerks to remedy the inaccessibility issues.
I do think it's important that, in addition to recognizing that there are sometimes physical access issues for persons with disabilities, there are other types of access issues. Language can be an access issue for some voters. We also have some voters for whom they're, maybe out of state during an election. And it's the process of requesting that absentee ballot, having it sent to their snowbird home or wherever that might be. We have access issues with around campuses in Wisconsin that our students, the universities and colleges oftentimes have to be the provider of the information that says this individual is living at this address on campus. We verify their residency, but not all campuses do that as easily and readily as it is implied that they should in the law for the voter ID. So there's all sorts of barriers, and being cognizant of just having the awareness that you have the right to vote. And if something is standing in your way, make sure you let your election officials know about that, because it's critically important that we solve systemic issues. But sometimes what we don't know, we can't contest. And so it's critical that voters have their voice heard, not only as to advocate for themselves and their own vote, but to ensure that others who might experience that same barrier don't have to go through the hurdle that they went through.
Yeah, you both said it all.
I think we've said a bunch about this, but I think I just want to circle back on something that we've alluded to, and I just want to make it explicit that this is really, it really needs all hands on deck. So through the Disability Vote Coalition, we are meeting, and I know this is true with other folks as well, we're meeting with legislators. And so much of the work with legislators is education. Many of the issues that people with disabilities face in the voting space, they're just not knowledgeable about. And so they, when they're making, when they're drafting legislation, they're not aware of the harm that a piece of legislation may be causing to particular populations of people. We work closely with the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and I do want to do a shout out to them because they have been very responsive for making their materials, like the My Vote website, very accessible to people using access technology like screen readers and magnification. They have this review program that goes into polling places and looks at how accessible is it, and then gives feedback to the clerk. And then there's a supply program. So some of the things that are necessary equipment for and modifications for a polling place to be accessible, like signage, letting people know where accessible parking is, doorbells for people to ring to do curbside voting. They can get those supplies at no charge from the Elections Commission, and that was a program that we advocated for through our roles on the Accessible Advisory Committee, and that saves money for the clerks who might be financially strapped. And then we also set up with the Elections Commission a place where people who are experiencing barriers to voting from access can file a concern with the Elections Commission so we can document. We really need documentation of these things. I want to reiterate what Deborah said about that, because we can't bring it to light when it's not being spoken. So when folks have access issues, please bring those forward so that we can shine the light on them and work on them.
And Bria, I think it's very important that all voters understand that in Wisconsin, we have a very decentralized voting system. And there are 1,852 clerks in Wisconsin who are charged with administering our elections. They all get guidance from the WEC. That guidance is interpreted at the local level by their poll workers, by their volunteers. And we really have to just be constantly aware that every single election administrator in this state wants to do the best job on behalf of Wisconsin's voters. And But this is not easy. It's not easy work. It takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of investment of energy on not only those days coming up to an election, but on election day, and then afterwards for the canvass and the equipment audits and all the different pieces that go into this. And that's because of all of that, we know our elections are safe, they're secure, they're accountable, because there are processes in place that really you can look at, you can audit. We have a paper trail for every ballot that's produced in the state of Wisconsin. We can recount every single election if we need to. And those kind of protections to the voters is what really sets Wisconsin apart as a safe, secure, accessible, and accountable election system.
Yeah, you both said it best. I'll just add that once somebody votes, it's a year-round effort to make sure that this is actually the democracy that they want to be in and that they want to work towards. So holding elected officials accountable to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the voters after the polls is just as equally important. And when we build trust in just the voting process, we build trust in our elects. And so it's just really important to see how that all kind of just does a full circle. And it's a year-round effort. And we are definitely talking to elected officials year-round, not just before the elections, to make sure that the elections are going to be safe for folks. So this is something that we're constantly in their ears about. And they know most of us on a first name basis, and they make sure that they are responsive to the needs of the people year-round.
I wanted to ask, because you have mentioned making sure to bring forward these access issues, how can folks do that? So if folks run into an issue, how can they make sure that it gets to a place where that issue can be resolved?
There are many ways, but probably the simplest way is if you encounter a problem on election day, we have a hotline that we use throughout the state of Wisconsin. It's 1-866-OUR-VOTE. And you can call that hotline and report a problem, an accessibility problem, that you weren't offered accessible equipment to vote on, and you need that in order to cast your ballot. There's no curbside available at your polling place. These are things that, you can be actively reporting, and then we on the backside can be in touch with the elections officials to try to remedy that problem in real time. Some problems can't be remedied in real time, but then we can create a complaint to the WEC that can be, put through the process of really identifying, what happened, why it happened, how do we prevent it from happening in the future. And if you see something, say something. I guess it's a really good rule to live by with elections, because nobody should be disenfranchised. If there are long lines, if there are you run out of paper ballots, we have solutions for all of those problems. And it just takes timing and planning and effort to really ensure that our elections run as smoothly and safely as possible.
I wanted to add to Deborah's hotline, the hotline number for the Wisconsin Disability Vote hotline. And that is run by Disability Rights Wisconsin. So it is 1-800-DISVOTE, DISVOTE. I don't have the numbers, digit translation in front of me for that, unfortunately. But that the folks that staff that hotline from Disability Rights Wisconsin have a high level of expertise on the accessibility issues, can help walk through and give you guidance in the moment. And again, like Deborah said, some things aren't resolvable in the moment. One of the things we always tell our voters is don't leave the polling place until you've cast your ballot. And sometimes if there's a voting equipment issue, some of our voting equipment in the state is getting quite antiquated. And so sometimes the print cartridges are dried out and people can't get their ballot printed if they've used the accessible equipment. And, they'll be told, oh, come back in an hour and we'll have this fixed. Please don't leave, because the likelihood of leaving and coming back diminishes significantly, especially if you're a non-driver. So try to work it through there, call, one of the hotline numbers, get some guidance on it. The other thing that I really want to make a plug for is for any voter to ask to use the accessible voting equipment in the polling place. I think it's such a good voter education piece to know how that equipment works, and you can use it in a variety of ways. So if you don't need the audio component, you can still do the on-screen component. And then every machine prints a paper ballot so that, again, we have that paper ballot trail. But you can be a great advocate for that equipment because it often sits untouched, and poll workers don't always know to promote it or how to promote it. So when we see more people accessing it, and then it just normalizes the experience, it helps reduce the marginalization for those of us who have to use it. And then you've also become a more educated voter about how accessibility works in this space and can report issues when you find them. So please use that equipment. It's easy to use and gives you another option, especially if the line is long. Sometimes the line will be out the door for getting to a voting carol, and the equipment is sitting there untouched, and the line would move more quickly if people had access to the accessible voting equipment.
I'll just add that the election protection hotlines are also available in Spanish, Asian languages, and Arabic, which is a huge win for language access.
We have talked about a little bit about y'all's collaborations, but if you want to, let me know if you want to touch any more on how you collaborate with each other, maybe some other CSW organizations. I know that Wisconsin Conservation Voters couldn't be here today, and we just mentioned Disability Rights Wisconsin, and those are two CSW orgs that y'all work with in this work. So if you guys want to name anything about your collaborative work, that would also be awesome.
We have loved working with the League to bring an awareness of the different types of accessible voting equipment to League members and to ask them to be advocates for the equipment in their own municipalities. All voting equipment is not created equal. It has to be certified by the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and I sit on a review panel, as does a couple of the staff members from the League, and we review every piece of voting equipment that's being considered in the state. There's some older stuff that it's not super accessible, and it has some barriers with it. And so I loved partnering with the League to do some education around that. And we got in front of folks that, in my world as a disability advocate, I might not get in front of because, with that door opening with the League. And that is a really, really powerful thing to do, that kind of cross fertilization in working together.
And I'll just say that it's always a pleasure to partner with other community shares organizations, but it is a real privilege to be in the same space, to occupy the same vision for voting in Wisconsin. As I mentioned before, this is not easy work, but it is work that is done by passionate people. And when we're partnering on any number of topics, as we do, to see that same shared passion in our partner organizations, it's affirming that we are getting, we're making our community stronger. We are ensuring that people's rights are being secured, and it's just a heck of a lot easier to do that together than trying to do it always by yourself.
Yeah, it's just nice to know that we're not working in silos that we're all here for one shared purpose, which is to defend and protect the democracy in our state and making sure everybody has that shared access to information, to knowing where their polling place is, to knowing what numbers they need to call. It's just important to share that in that same language and share all of those resources collectively.
Awesome. And I want to say that we often have conversations about voting and voting rights and accessibility to voting because it touches every single person's life and all of the organizations and sort of sections of organizations that fall under CSW. So last year we did talk about voting. We talked last year, I believe, about fair maps. And so I wanted to know if y'all had an update on your fair maps work and if y'all could share that with us.
Yeah, well, in collaboration with the Fair Maps Coalition, which we're also a part of, we worked year round. We worked for the last 5 years, and some of us even more beyond that, to make sure that we had fair maps in our state. So February 19th, on President's Day, the governor officially signed off on the maps which he proposed to the Wisconsin Supreme Court for consideration in the Clark versus Wisconsin Elections Commission case. And it was one of the 4 maps that experts deemed that they met all constitutional requirements and that they were politically neutral, which is just really exciting for our state and really amazing for the power of our vote, because for the first time in 13 years, Wisconsinites will really get to make sure that their vote counts and that under the governor's maps, Wisconsin voters will pick their elected officials and not the other way around.
That is amazing. That is really a testament to the work that y'all have done. I've worked with these organizations like for years and years now, and Fair Maps is always at the front of the conversation. So congratulations to y'all and the work that you have done over the years. Do y'all have anything else that you'd like to add as we wrap up this conversation? This has been really great. So yeah, if y'all have anything else that you want to plug at the end or to let folks know, now's the time.
I'll just remind everyone that our next election in Wisconsin is April 2nd. Make sure you participate. Your vote doesn't count if you don't cast it.
I just look forward to continue working with you all year round. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, because many hands get the work done, and together we help each other learn. I think that for me is one of the greatest gifts of this work, whether it's voting work or other shared endeavors through CSW, is that I become a better person thanks to you all. It helps me understand things and the nuances with so much more depth, helps me understand maybe where my own unconscious biases were limiting my thinking. And, I hope that I do that and help lift up things for other folks. So it's just such a powerful reminder of that we are better together. So gosh, it's been really awesome to spend this time with you all. And thank you for your incredible work in the voting space.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on the Big Share Live this year. And I look forward to the work that y'all do in the years to come.